I didn't mean to take the job. That's probably the part I keep coming back to. Like if I can just explain that one detail clearly enough, it'll make everything else make sense. Like it wasn't my fault exactly. Like I didn't walk into something knowing what it was. I just needed the money. It started the way most bad decisions do. Quietly, without any real weight behind it. I'd been laid off about 3 weeks earlier. Nothing dramatic, just a polite email and a meeting with someone from HR who kept smiling like she was doing me a favor. My savings were already thinner than I like to admit, and rent wasn't going to wait for me to figure things out. So I started applying everywhere. Day jobs, night jobs, warehouse work, retail, anything that didn't require a degree I didn't have or experience I couldn't fake. Most places didn't even respond. A few sent automated rejections. After a while, you stop checking your email with hope and start checking it out of habit. That's when I saw the listing. Night shift call operator, immediate hire. No company name, no logo, just a phone number and an address on the edge of town. The pay was higher than it should have been. Not insanely high, but enough that it stood out. Enough that it made me read the listing twice. No experience required. Quiet work environment. Must be comfortable working overnight hours. That was it. I remember sitting there, staring at my screen, feeling that little itch in the back of my head. The one that tells you something's off. But then I looked at my bank account, and that feeling got a lot easier to ignore. I called the number. A man picked up on the second ring. No greeting, no company name, just a flat yeah. I hesitated for a second, before explaining I was calling about the job listing. There was a pause. Not the kind where someone's checking something or thinking, just silence. Long enough that I pulled the phone away to make sure the call hadn't dropped. Then he said, "You can start tonight." No interview, no questions, nothing. I should have hung up right there. Instead, I asked for the address again. The building didn't look like a call center. I got there around 10:30 p.m. My shift was supposed to start at 11. The address led me to a part of town I wasn't too familiar with. Old industrial blocks. Half of them shut down, the other half looking like they were on their way there. The place itself sat at the end of a narrow road, tucked between a chain-link fence and an empty lot full of weeds. It was a squat concrete building with no signage. Just a single dim light over the front door and a parking lot with maybe 4 cars in it. I sat in my car for a minute, engine running, looking at it. You ever get that feeling where everything is just a little too quiet? No traffic, no distant noise. Even the air felt still, like the whole area had been paused. I told myself I was being dramatic. Money's money, right? I grabbed my phone, locked the car, and walked up to the door. It was already unlocked. Inside, it was brighter than I expected. Fluorescent lights, the kind that hum just enough to get under your skin if you notice them. The air smelled faintly like dust and something chemical, like old cleaning supplies. There was a desk right by the entrance. Behind it sat a man who looked exactly like he sounded on the phone. Mid-50s maybe. Thin, pale in a way that didn't look natural, like he hadn't seen sunlight in a long time. He didn't smile when I walked in, didn't even look surprised. "You're the new one," he said. Not a question. "I called earlier." He nodded once, like that confirmed something for him, then stood up slowly. "Follow me." That was the entire orientation. The room he led me into was wrong. At first glance, it looked like a normal call center floor. Rows of desks, each with a computer, a monitor, and a headset neatly placed in front of it. But there were no decorations, no personal items, no signs of life. Every desk was exactly the same. Same chair, same setup, same distance from the next one. It looked less like a workplace and more like a display. There were only 3 other people in the room. All of them already seated. All of them wearing headsets. None of them looked at me when I walked in. "Sit anywhere," the man said. I picked a desk near the middle. The chair was already pulled out slightly, like someone had just gotten up from it. I remember hesitating for a second before sitting down. The headset felt warm. I told myself I was imagining it. The man placed a sheet of paper next to the keyboard. "Answer when it rings," he said. "Follow the guidelines." I looked down at the paper. It wasn't what I expected. No customer service prompts. Just a list. Do not interrupt the caller. Do not ask questions unless prompted. Do not remove your headset during a call. If the caller repeats a phrase 3 times, end the call immediately. If you hear breathing but no voice, remain silent until the line disconnects. Do not acknowledge any personal information the caller provides about you. I read it twice. "Is this a joke?" I asked. When I looked up, he was already walking away. The phone rang at exactly 11 o'clock p.m. Not a second earlier, not a second later. I remember staring at it for a moment, my hand hovering just above the headset. Across the room, the other workers didn't react. They were already on calls, speaking in low, steady voices, calm, measured, like none of this was strange at all. The ringing didn't stop. I took a breath, put on the headset, and pressed the button to answer. "Hello," I said. For a moment, there was nothing. Then I heard it, not a voice, breathing. Too close to the microphone. My eyes flicked down to the list. Rule 5. I didn't say anything. The breathing continued. In, out, in, out. It went on for what felt like minutes. Then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. The line went dead. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. My heart was beating faster than it should have been. "First call," a voice said beside me. I turned. One of the other workers was looking at me now. A woman, maybe late 20s, dark circles under her eyes, like she hadn't slept in days. I nodded. She gave a small, humorless smile. "You get used to it," she said. I opened my mouth to ask what she meant. And then my phone rang again. I pressed the button before I could think too hard about it. "Hello?" This time, the line wasn't silent. "You shouldn't be there." The voice was low, not distorted, not mechanical, just wrong in a way I couldn't immediately place, like it was being spoken through something instead of into it. I frowned slightly. "Sir, The voice cut me off. I said, "You shouldn't be there." I felt a flicker of irritation. It sounded like a prank call, the kind bored people make in the middle of the night when they know someone has to answer. "I'm here to take your call," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Is there something I can help you with?" There was a pause. Then, "You don't understand." Something about the way it said that made my stomach tighten. I glanced down at the paper again. Do not interrupt the caller. Do not ask questions unless prompted. "Okay," I said carefully. Another pause. Then the voice spoke again, quieter this time. "They told me that too." A faint crackling filled the line, like static just on the edge of hearing. "They told me it was just a job." I swallowed. This didn't feel like a prank anymore. "Who told you?" I asked, before I could stop myself. The silence that followed felt heavier than anything that had come before it. Slowly, I looked down at the paper again. Rule 2. Do not ask questions unless prompted. "You're new," the voice said. Not a question. A statement. I can tell. My grip tightened slightly on the edge of the desk. "How?" I asked. Another mistake. The line hissed softly. "Because you're still asking questions." I didn't respond to that. For a few seconds, neither of us said anything. Then, "They don't like that." A chill ran down my spine. "Who doesn't?" I said. The moment the words left my mouth, I regretted them. The breathing started again. Not like the first call. This was sharper. Like whoever, or whatever, was on the other end had leaned directly into the receiver. I froze. Rule 5. If you hear breathing but no voice, remain silent until the line disconnects. So I did. The breathing grew louder. In, out, in, You need to leave. The voice snapped back suddenly, cutting through the sound like a knife. Right now, my heart was pounding. I can't just... The line went dead. I stared at the screen for a moment, my reflection faintly visible in the dark glass. Then I slowly took off the headset. That one talks more than usual. The woman beside me, again. I turned toward her. You've heard that before? She gave a small shrug. They repeat. Not all the time, but enough. Repeat? I said. You mean the same people call back? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked past me, toward the far end of the room. I followed her gaze. The man from before, the one who hired me, was standing in the doorway, watching us. The moment he noticed I'd seen him, he stepped away, like he hadn't been there at all. Don't talk too much between calls, she said quietly. I looked back at her. Why? Her expression didn't change. They don't like that either. The next few calls came faster, barely a minute between them. Each one worse than the last. One was just whispering. Not words, at least not words I could understand. Just a constant, overlapping murmur that made it feel like there were multiple voices trying to speak through the same mouth. I kept my eyes on the desk, focusing on the edge of the paper as I listened. Rule 1. Do not interrupt. Rule 3. Do not remove your headset. So I didn't. Another call. Crying. Soft at first, and louder. Desperate. Please, a woman's voice said. Please, I didn't mean to. The line cut. Another. Laughter. High-pitched, uneven, like it was breaking apart mid-sound. I felt my chest tightening with each call. This wasn't customer service. This wasn't anything normal. By the time the clock on the computer read 1:13 a.m., I was already thinking about leaving. I didn't care about the money anymore. There was something deeply wrong about this place. The calls, the rules, the way the others acted like this was routine. I reached up, fingers brushing the edge of the headset. Don't. I froze. The woman was looking at me again. Her expression had changed. No tired indifference. Just warning. Not during a shift, she said. I just need a break, I said. You'll get one. When? She didn't answer. The phone rang again. I hesitated this time. Long enough that I felt something shift in the room. Not a sound, not movement, just a tension. Like every person in that room had suddenly become aware of me. Waiting. I swallowed and answered. Hello? Static. Then, Mike. Every muscle in my body locked up. I hadn't told anyone here my name. Not the man at the desk. Not the woman beside me. No one. Who is this? I said. My voice didn't sound like mine anymore. Too tight. Too thin. The line crackled. Then, softly, you shouldn't have come tonight. My mouth went dry. How do you know my name? A pause. Then, we've been listening. A sharp ringing filled my ears. I pulled the headset slightly away, and then I stopped. Rule 3. Do not remove your headset during a call. My hand hovered there, trembling. To what? I asked. The answer came immediately. Everything. The lights above me flickered, just once, but it was enough. I looked up instinctively. Across the room, the other workers hadn't moved. Still sitting, still facing forward, still talking, like nothing had changed. You said that before, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Why? The line went quiet. For a moment I thought the call had dropped. Then, because you're not supposed to hear us yet. My stomach dropped. Yet, I repeated. A faint clicking sound came through the line. Slow, rhythmic, like something tapping against glass. You started answering too early. I didn't understand that. What does that mean? No response. Just the clicking. Closer now. You weren't scheduled for tonight. My chest tightened. Yes, I was, I said. I got hired today. No, the voice said. And this time, It sounded certain. You weren't. The line went dead again. I didn't move. For a long time, I just sat there, staring straight ahead. Then, slowly, I turned toward the woman. "What day is it?" I asked. She blinked at me. "Tuesday," she said. I shook my head. "I mean, the date." She hesitated, then told me. My blood ran cold. That wasn't possible. I knew what day I'd applied for the job. I knew what day I'd made the call. This didn't line up. Not even close. "That's not right," I said. Her expression shifted slightly. "How long do you think you've been here?" she asked. I opened my mouth and then stopped, because I didn't actually know. The phone rang again, louder this time, sharper. I flinched. "Answer it," she said. I didn't want to. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to stand up, rip off the headset, and walk out that door. But something about the room made that feel impossible. Like the moment I tried, something would stop me. So instead, I answered, "Hello?" For a moment, there was nothing. Then, a voice I recognized, my own. "I found a job," it said. My breath caught. "I start tonight." I felt the world tilt slightly. "No," I whispered. The voice continued, "It's just a call center. Night shift. Easy money." It was me. From earlier. From before I ever came here. I just needed the money. The line crackled. Then, "You still do." I don't remember deciding to stand up. 1 second I was sitting there, headset pressed tight against my ear, listening to my own voice echo back at me like something recorded and replayed from a place it shouldn't exist. And the next, my chair was scraping loudly against the floor as I pushed myself away from the desk. "I'm done," I said. My voice sounded small in that room, too small. No one responded. The others kept talking into their headsets, their voices low and steady, like nothing had changed. Like I hadn't just broken whatever unspoken rule was holding everything together. I said, "I'm done," I repeated, louder this time. Still nothing. I reached up and pulled the headset off. The moment it left my ears, the silence hit me. Not normal silence, not the absence of sound. This was heavy. Like I just stepped into a vacuum where everything had been stripped away. And then, the ringing started. Not from the phone, from everywhere. A high, sharp tone that dug straight into my skull. I doubled over slightly, pressing a hand against the side of my head. "What the hell?" "Put it back on." The woman's voice, sharp, urgent. I looked at her. For the first time, she didn't look tired. She looked scared. "You have to put it back on. Now." The ringing got louder. It felt like it was vibrating behind my eyes. "I'm leaving," I said, forcing the words out through clenched teeth. "You can't." "I can," I snapped. "Watch me." I turned and started toward the door. Each step felt wrong, like walking through water that wasn't there. The lights flickered again, once, twice, then steadied. I reached the doorway. The hallway beyond it looked darker than it had before. Longer, too. That didn't make sense. It was a straight shot to the front desk. I'd walked it not even 2 hours ago. Now it felt like it stretched on forever. "Please," the woman said behind me. I hesitated. Just for a second. "What happens if I don't?" I asked. There was a pause. Then she said very quietly, "They notice." The ringing spiked. I staggered slightly, grabbing the edge of the doorframe to steady myself. "Who notices?" I asked. But I already knew the answer. The lights went out. Not all at once. One row at a time, from the far end of the room, moving toward me. Click. Dark. Click. Dark. Each section falling into shadow until the only light left was the faint glow from the monitors. I turned back. The others were still sitting there, still wearing their headsets, but they weren't talking anymore. They were all looking at me, at the exact same time. Every single one of them. Their expressions were wrong. Too wide, too still, like they'd forgotten how faces are supposed to work. "Put it back on," the woman whispered. But she wasn't looking at me anymore. She was looking past me, into the hallway. Something moved out there. Not fast, not slow, just deliberate. A shape in the dark that didn't match the space around it. Too tall, too thin, like it had been stretched to fit somewhere it didn't belong. My breath caught. Okay. I stepped back into the room. The moment I crossed the threshold, the ringing eased slightly. Not gone, but quieter, manageable. My hands were shaking as I grabbed the headset from the desk. The second I put it back on, everything snapped back. The lights, the sound, the low murmur of voices filling the room again, like nothing had happened. I stood there for a second, breathing hard, trying to steady myself. Then, slowly, I sat back down. The phone rang immediately. Of course it did. I stared at it, then pressed the button. "Hello?" You stepped away. The voice was calm, measured, not the same as before. This one sounded older. "You're not supposed to do that." I swallowed. "I just needed a second." "No," it said. "You didn't." The line crackled softly. "You were instructed." My eyes flicked down to the paper. The rules. "I didn't see anything about breaks," I said. "You're not here to rest." Something about the way it said that made my stomach twist. "Then what am I here for?" I asked. A pause. Then, to listen. The words seemed to settle into the space around me. Heavy, final. "To who?" I asked. No answer. Just a faint sound in the background. That clicking, again, slow, patient. "You answered too early," the voice continued. "You weren't prepared." "I didn't even know this place existed until today," I said. "Yes," it said. "That's the problem." I frowned. I applied. "You hired me." "No," the voice said again. "You didn't." The air in my lungs felt suddenly too thin. "Then how did I get here?" I asked. This time the pause was longer, long enough that I thought the call might end. Then, you were reached. A cold feeling settled in my chest. "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means," the voice said slowly, "you picked up." The line went dead. I sat there, staring at nothing. Then, quietly, "That doesn't make sense." "Stop trying to make it make sense." I turned. The woman again. She was watching me closely now. "You'll hurt yourself," she said. "I already am," I replied. She didn't argue with that. The hours after that blurred together. Call after call, voice after voice. Some whispered, some cried, some just listened. And every now and then, one of them would know something they shouldn't. My name, my address, things I'd never said out loud, things I'd barely remembered myself. Each time, I tried to follow the rules. Don't interrupt, don't ask questions, don't react. But it got harder. Because the longer I stayed, the more it felt like they weren't just talking to me, they were learning me. At some point, the woman leaned closer. "They start recognizing you," she said. I didn't look at her. "It gets worse." "How long have you been here?" I asked. She hesitated. "I don't know." That answer didn't surprise me as much as it should have. The next call came in softer than the others. No sharp ring, just a gentle tone. Almost inviting. I answered anyway. "Hello?" For a moment, nothing. "Do you remember the first time you heard us?" My chest tightened. "No," I said. "That's not possible." "It is," the voice said. "You just didn't know what you were hearing." A faint sound drifted through the line. Not breathing, not static, something else. Layered, distant, like voices stacked on top of each other, just out of reach. "We've always been here," it said, "just on the other side of things." My grip tightened on the desk. "Of what?" I asked. There was a pause. I didn't realize I was leaning closer to the desk until my forehead almost touched the monitor. "Of the line," I repeated. The words felt thin in my mouth, like they couldn't carry the weight of what they were supposed to mean. "Yes." The voice sounded clearer now, not louder, just closer. Like whatever distance had been between us before was shrinking. "You hear us because you're meant to. That doesn't mean anything," I said. "It means you answered when others wouldn't." I shook my head. I answered a phone. "No," it said gently. "You accepted the call." A faint pressure built in my ears, like descending too quickly in an airplane. "Everyone accepts calls," I said. "That's the job." "No," the voice said again. "Not this one." The line didn't go dead this time. It stayed open, quiet, waiting. I became aware of the rest of the room again. The low murmur of other conversations, the hum of the lights, the soft, constant presence of something just beneath all of it. "You can leave," the voice said suddenly. I froze. "What? You can leave," it repeated. "Right now." My eyes flicked toward the hallway. Still there. Still dark. "You couldn't before," it continued. "You weren't ready to understand." A slow, creeping hope started to form in my chest. "Understand what?" I asked. "That you're already part of it." The hope died just as quickly. "No," I said, more firmly this time. "I'm not." "You are," it said. "You're listening." "That doesn't mean anything," I snapped. "It means everything." The pressure in my ears sharpened. "You think this place is where we are?" the voice asked. I didn't answer. "You think the building matters?" I looked around. The identical desks, the identical people, the identical calls. "Doesn't it?" I asked. "No." A pause. Then, "We go where the line goes." Something cold slid down my spine. "And where does it go?" I asked. The answer came immediately. The call ended. No click. No static. Just gone. I sat there, unmoving. Then slowly, I turned toward the woman. She was already looking at me. "They told you," she said, not a question. I nodded. "They always do," she murmured. "What happens now?" I asked. Her expression didn't change. "You finish your shift." And then, a small pause. "Then, you go home." The rest of the night passed without anything new, which somehow made it worse. The calls continued, but they stopped escalating. No more personal details, no more direct warnings. Just voices. Endless voices. Talking, crying, laughing, waiting. By the time the clock hit 6 a.m., I felt hollow, like something had been slowly scraped out of me over the course of the night. The phone stopped ringing. Not gradually. All at once. The room fell silent. No one spoke. No one moved. Then, one by one, the others stood up. They took off their headsets, set them neatly on their desks, and walked out. No goodbyes. No acknowledgement. Just gone. I followed them. The hallway looked normal again. Short, well lit, leading straight to the front. The man at the desk was still there. Of course he was. He looked up as I approached. "Time." He smiled. "You made it through your first shift," he said. I didn't respond. I just walked past him. Out the door. Into the morning light. The outside world felt wrong. Too bright. Too open. Like I'd stepped into something unreal. I got into my car. Sat there for a moment. Then started the engine. The radio flicked on automatically. Static. I reached to turn it off. "We're still listening." I froze. The voice was faint, buried beneath the noise, but it was there. I shut the radio off immediately. Silence. I let out a shaky breath. "It's over," I muttered. It's done. I drove home. Every sound felt sharper than it should have been. Every shadow just a little too deep. By the time I pulled into my driveway, my hands were shaking again. But I was home. That had to mean something, right? I went inside, locked the door, checked the windows. Everything was exactly how I'd left it. Normal. Safe. I let out a long breath and leaned against the wall. "See," I said out loud. "Nothing followed you." My phone rang. I stared at it. Slowly, I pulled it out of my pocket. Unknown number. Of course. I hesitated, then declined the call. The screen went dark. For a moment, nothing happened. A voicemail notification. I didn't remember setting that up. I didn't remember giving this job my number. I didn't remember. The phone buzzed again in my hand. Another voicemail, and another, and another. They were coming in too fast, stacking, piling up, like something on the other end had been waiting. I opened one. I don't know why. I just did. There was no greeting, no introduction, just breathing. Slow, uneven, too close. My hand tightened around the phone. I backed toward the wall again. Another voicemail played automatically. "Mike." I closed my eyes. "No," I whispered. A third message. "We're still here." The lights in my house flickered. Just once. I looked up sharply. Every instinct in my body screamed the same thing. It followed you. The phone buzzed again. Incoming call. Same unknown number. I stared at it. It rang, and rang, and rang. I thought about the rules. Do not interrupt. Do not ask questions. Do not remove your headset. I wasn't wearing one now. Did that matter? The ringing got louder. Not from the phone, from everywhere. That same high, piercing tone from before. Building, pressing, waiting. My hand moved before I could stop it. I answered, carefully. "Hello?" For a moment, nothing. Then, "Thank you for continuing your shift." My stomach dropped. "This isn't my shift," I said. My voice barely held together. I left. A soft, almost amused sound came through the line. "No," it said. "You transferred." The ringing in my ears spiked. "What does that mean?" I asked. But I already knew. Deep down, I already knew. It means the line doesn't end. It follows, it connects, it waits, and once you answer, you don't stop.